Navigate the complexities of law enforcement, officer safety, and risk management with former NYPD leaders Rodney Harrison and Rudy Hall. Serious topics, unfiltered perspectives. This is The Risk Room.
Hello and welcome. Episode number 10 of The Risk Room. Rodney, how are you?
I'm good, my friend. How's everything?
Awesome. Still orange and blue skies.
Yeah, I'm sure. How's your golf
game? Golf game is getting there. New grips making a difference. I got to work on my putting, but its shape is coming around before the end of the summer. I'll have my revenge on you.
Yeah,
maybe we'll take some video.
Work on your slicing coming off the tee. That's the thing.
Yeah, I cut down on the yardage when I cut the slicing out, so I gotta live with it. So, question of the day for you. It's going to be a new part of The Risk Room. It's going to be the question of the day. So, Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce. Now, you were at the wedding, correct?
I wasn't invited.
You weren't invited? I can't believe they didn't invite you. It's 1,000 people. How did you not get invited?
Yeah, shame. Well, they invited the other Rodney Harrison, but not this one. But you know what's funny, Ru? And I'm assuming that you must be bringing up the interview that I did with Entertainment Tonight regarding the wedding and some of the concerns that came with them using Madison Square Garden as their site for the matrimony. And I'm very, very happy for Taylor Swift. I'm happy for Travis Kelce. I don't know either one of them, but these seem to be very iconic and down to earth people. And, I sat down with the people from Entertainment Tonight and they asked me a host of different questions. And, it seems like they were trying to get me to talk about some of the frustrations that come with this wedding, and are they capitalizing or putting a burden on the NYPD? Now, I will also say this. The NYPD during that time frame, they had the wedding, they had a ball being dropped in Times Square, they had the fireworks the next day. So there was a lot of different things that were going on, as well as people climbing the Empire State Building and a host of other things. There was a lot of things going on that weekend that put a strain on the New York City police officers. And I think my comments and my conversation got a little misconstrued. I'm very, very happy for them. This is something that we do in the NYPD, that there are time frames where, we're going to find ourselves being asked to do a little bit more than usual. But, the NYPD to me is one of the most resilient organizations in the world. So at the end of the day, it was nice. There was no incidents. The NYPD did a great job. Was it a little bit of a hardship for the men and women in blue? Yes, but we got through it. We got through the ball drop. We got through the fireworks, and we're getting ready for the rest of the summer season to protect New York City.
Right. So we said ball drop. Let's be clear. We're not talking about New Year's Eve. Most people think of the ball drop in Times Square for New Year's Eve, which traditionally it is. But in honor of the 250th anniversary of the country, there was a ball drop in Times Square this year. So
yeah, and it's not the same type of crowd. Listen, for the ball drop on New Year's Eve, there's probably about a million people out there. I don't think they got that type of attendance, but between that, the fireworks, which is absolutely phenomenal, and then of course the wedding, there were a lot of people being asked to do a little bit more in the NYPD.
You want to play that video real quick from Entertainment Tonight?
Of course, the couple chose this unconventional venue because it functions almost like a security fortress, making it much easier to keep wedding details private. No drones here. It's estimated that as many as 200 NYPD officers were deployed to help ensure everything went according to plan.
In my 30 years in policing, this is something that I haven't seen before when it comes to a wedding. We're calling a lot of police officers in on their days off. It is a big cost to the city. It's probably going to be in the millions.
So, quick question for you. In your time as chief of department, was there ever an event that someone, a entity, private, personal, was wanted to put on in the city, and you said, no, we cannot let you do that because we can't provide security for it?
Well, I will tell you this: if the president does a visit, if the Pope does a visit, if those two individuals come to town and we are able to accommodate them, then with all due respect, and listen, I have the utmost respect for Taylor Swift and the Swiftie world out there, we can make sure that her wedding went smoothly.
Right. But I'm saying there's never a time where you had to tell someone, hey, no, we can't do it.
Never.
Which is amazing when you think about a city the size of New York and the just public safety, the calls for service, the parades, all the events, and they still manage to, for the most part, carry them off without a hitch, which is, a credit to law enforcement, especially in a city like New York.
Well, I will say this, Rudy. If we feel that there's going to be a criminal element or maybe even a terrorist concern, then we may politely decline their permit to have an event. But something like a Taylor Swift, and listen, there were a lot of different Swifties out there trying to get a snapshot of her. It really wasn't that much of a concern compared to other things that I've seen in the past that people have come to New York City to either visit or put on an event or something of that nature.
All right, awesome. All right, let's get into the topic of the day. Immigrations, Customs and Enforcement, ICE has been a topic that has garnered a lot of attention over the past couple of years, specifically last year and a half, for numerous reasons. So we are honored to have two guests who are, when it comes to questions on ICE and ICE enforcement, they are the go-to. First, let me introduce Kenny Lopez, who's recently retired from ICE.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Good morning, sir. Thank you. And next we have Darius Reeves, who was a former field director for ICE and just retired recently.
Good morning.
Good morning, Darius. So I know we have time constraints because I know, Darius, you have somewhere else to be, have a meeting. So I just want to jump right into it. Let's start with you, Darius. Just give us a trajectory of your career coming into ICE and your time in ICE, and then when you end up retiring.
Yes, I started out as a Legacy Immigration and Naturalization Service immigration inspector, Northern Border, Highgate Springs, Vermont, and then subsequently at John F. Kennedy Airport. I'm the old school white shirts, if you remember when you were coming through the airports. From there, 2005, I'm not mistaken, I became a deportation officer in New York field office. I was in 26 Federal Plaza, Varick Street, until 2011, where I transferred into the Dallas field office. And the Dallas field office became a first line supervisor. And I was there until I want to say 2014, where then I got promoted and was sent to headquarters in Washington, D.C. So I was at headquarters in Washington, D.C., 287G, National Program Manager, and then became the ERO Special Assistant in the ICE front office. And I was there for two ICE directors. The last confirmed ICE director, Sarah Saldana, and then Tom Holman, as you know today. I was there for, as the ERO Special Assistant in that regard.
For our audience, explain what ERO is.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the Division of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It's the enforcement removal operations. So ICE is primarily two law enforcement wings: Homeland Security Investigations. Those are your 1811 special agent special investigations. Enforcement and removal operations. We are the detention and removal piece to ICE, and we're classified as 1801s, general investigators.
Got it.
So that's ERO. From there, was promoted to become a deputy field office director. So I got to go back to New York State, Buffalo, New York, and became a deputy field office director, where it all started for me, back down to New York. So I was there, during the height of the beginning of COVID. I was in running our detention portfolio, and then transferred into Baltimore, Maryland, as a deputy field office director, and subsequently became the field office director for Baltimore, Maryland, and retired in May of 2025. So my career started in 2003 and ended in immigration in 2025.
Awesome, thank you. And Kenny, tell us about your career.
Well, I started off a little bit earlier. I started off in 2000. I took a position as a detention enforcement officer with Immigration and Naturalization Services, formerly known as INS, at 201 Varick Street, if you guys are familiar with that.
Yep.
That was the old detention
well.
facility. Yep. So I worked there for about 2.5 years. Then I took a position at JFK Airport as a customs inspector before the transition into DHS. I was a customs inspector for about 8 months before it became Department of Homeland Security, and then the title changed to Customs and Border Protection Officer, CBP officer. From there, I was there till about 2005, where I took a position with ERO, Enforcement Removal Operations, and until I retired in December of 2024.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, listen, I have a quick question. And in the NYPD, by the way, congratulations on what sounds like to be stellar careers and a lot of moving positions in your journey. So in the NYPD, you can move around as well. You could, take a promotion test and move up to the rank of sergeant and lieutenant. You can go the route of going into an investigative unit and becoming a detective, and there's a process for that as well. Or you can get transferred to another unit or things of that nature. My question is, there was a lot of moving parts for your positions. Were those tests that you had to take? Were those applications that you had to put in for those positions? Like, how did that moving situation come into place? And I apologize, because as much as I've done 32 years in law enforcement, believe it or not, I may not know the worlds of the federal law enforcement agencies and regarding how it works. So Darius, that question for you, then Ken, maybe you could clean up the rest of that inquiry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a process by which there's an announcement for vacancies. You apply. You have to set a score is set, and then you go through a batteries of interviews, and subsequently a hiring panel will either select you or not select you.
Now, is there an arrest number that they look at? Is like there's something type of productivity where they say, hey, you've done a lot of great work in a certain position when it comes to grabbing immigrants or something like that? Like, what is there something that helps you surpass other individuals? Is where I'm trying to go with this question.
Okay, yeah. So in regards to the supervisory and management levels, yes, clearly there's a body of work, if you will, and that's dependent upon the positions and so forth and so on. So it's clear that in your resume and the questions that are asked of you, that it's reflective of that body of work. In regards to, are there questions specific to how many immigrants you have arrested, or how many removals you have had, or how many violent criminal prosecutions you have committed or processed? Not in the original testing, but those questions may interview panel, and that's really going to be specific into what role that you're trying to move into. Got it. If that makes any sense.
No, it makes a whole lot of sense. Ken, that same question for you as well. If you could share your thoughts.
No, absolutely. And Darius is 100% right. It's the whole body of work that's looked at, from arrest to docket management, your writing skills. All of that takes into effect. And in my case, it was my second language that actually helped me move up the ranks because of my ability. Because of the diversity of New York City, where you have half of the population speak Spanish. Okay. So it was, for me, it was very good for me, regarding that, having the second language. It benefited me a lot.
So that's a question for you, Ken. When you first came into ICE, what was your training that you received?
Well, both, you needed the immigration. In order to get hired as a deportation officer, you needed the basic academy, the Immigration Officer Academy, which I did back in 2000 when I went down to the academy as a detention enforcement officer. Yeah, so you already had the background. What they would do, they would hire you based on that background, and then you do like a 3-week refresher course. But it was incumbent upon you to know the INA, which is the National the Immigration Nationality Act. That's basically our law, the INA, and it was upon us to be as knowledgeable as possible. Because if you didn't study and you didn't apply the law, then you'd be in the same place that you'd never move up, within the command.
But you came, that was in 2000, right?
Yes, sir.
So ICE became ICE with 2003?
2003, the enactment of the Homeland Security Act.
Right. So now an agent that was hired in 2003, 2004 and beyond, what was their training protocol like? Because you guys were in immigration enforcement before it was formerly ICE and INS. So once there's a creation of ICE, what did the training look like?
It was it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for that for those courses, especially the criminal law and the immigration law, because our academy was 6 months long.
Right.
And they broke it down pretty, because instead of having, especially with the, Darius mentioned the 1801 as a general investigator, basically for the 1811, which is the criminal investigator, their backgrounds are a little bit more, the academy's a little bit longer. So what they did it with us, because they only had to include the immigration law, that you didn't have to worry about the other titles, Title 21, which is narcotics, Title 18, which is criminal. We just focused on Title 8, which is the Immigration Nationality Act. So it made it a little bit easier, but it's hard. Believe me, it's hard because as Darius will tell you, the laws are consistently changing. There's always appeals. There's always something going on within the federal court systems that wind up amending the law, and then you have policies and procedures that are passed down, from headquarters, and you just got to apply them, and you just got to remember everything everything you're doing. But I mean, it is so intricate that in my 20 plus years, I still haven't figured it out, and I thought I knew a lot, and I still haven't figured it out.
Right.
Hey, the applicant processing, the background checks on identifying people that want to become agents. How robust is it? How much of a background check do they do? Do they go do a deep dive? Do you speak to neighbors? Do they do credit checks? Or is it kind of like you just apply and, there's not much after that application of the process of filling out the application? I'm just curious, like how much of a deep dive of a background checks do they do to individuals that want to become agents?
For me, I went through.
Yeah, go ahead, Darius. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
No, go ahead, Kenny. Go ahead. No, go ahead. You beat me.
Well, it is a very detailed. They, when you fill out the initial the OPM form, it is a slew of questions, and then when you start the initial background, I mean, depending on your age, because if you're my age, you're not going to go back and find my high school teachers to see how kind of a student I was. It's all depending on the age, but from my understanding, they do a deep dive into your history, just to test your integrity as well as your performance.
From what I understood, it was like a 10-year background look into at minimum, 5 to 10-year background looks into it. And it's a whole host of things. You have your medical, and you actually had, federal contracted background investors that will go to your neighbors, will talk to you, go to your neighbors, your prior employers, and so forth and so on. And in advance of the credit checks, the criminal checks, and things of that nature. So, yeah, it was very intense, I felt.
Did that change?
And then you constantly go through background checks the longer you're in the agency, your background check keeps coming up.
Wow.
Yeah, I carried top secret clearance and things of that nature. I'm sure, Kenny, you had the same, right? You had at least SCI, correct?
Yeah.
Right. So you had those continuously inquiries being made on you, and then in management, I had to do my financial statements.
Disclosure,
to ensure that
disclosures.
Funky stocks, so I went and invest in that. So it was constant.
I would say that's the same for across the federal agencies. And I used to work in a Joint Terrorism Task Force, and I was a TFO, which is Task Force Officer because I wasn't a federal agent. I still work for the police department, but I was assigned to a task force. Every 5 years, it was 5 years. It was 5 years. We had to do that. Your disclosures, financial disclosures, the background check to keep your TS clearance. And I've always often wondered, like law enforcement, when somebody gets hired, we don't look into their background anymore. We don't look to see, is this person drowning in debt? You know, after being a cop for 5 years, if you're drowning in debt, it makes you susceptible to bribes and everything else, right? But that's a mistake for law enforcement, traditional policing agencies across the country. We should be constantly, and it's not so much of a matter of trying to fire people, but sometimes people need help, right? So if you find out a person is struggling physically, financially, mentally, we can get them that help. So I applaud the federal agencies for doing that continuous 5-year look back and make sure that their folks are where they need to be. Rod, you were about to ask a question. I was thinking the same thing, so I'm gonna let you ask it. I think you were about to say it. Go ahead.
Well, before I get to that, and just want to say, you know, in defense of the NYPD, if you're looking to get a certain type of clearance, then yeah, they do a deep dive into a lot of your financials and things of that nature. Regarding doing a background check into 35,000 and then civilians as well, I with all due respect, I think that's like virtually impossible to do. Now, should they do random checks, kind of like the way they do dole checks? I'm not against that. I think that's actually a good point, Rudy. But being able to do it on a regular basis, it really is. It's number one. I think it may be even a little intrusive. But the other concern that I have is it something that can be possibly done for such large agencies when it comes to municipalities?
Yeah, it wouldn't. So I'm going to go down a rabbit hole, but we can easily go down a rabbit hole, so forgive us. It wouldn't be a thorough check for like you get a TS security clearance. Mm-hmm. But we can do, how hard is it to run a quick check on the computer to say, hey, has anybody had any domestic calls, or you do credit checks? Just simple credit check. It's not that hard, right? Fortune 500 companies, they do it. But law enforcement, they never do that. And so we don't change, we don't evolve, right? But that's another conversation for another episode. But go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I forgot my.
Took you down a rabbit hole, and I won. So I think you want to ask about you were asking about the training that agents go through historically.
Yes.
In the process of hiring folks. And I think you're going to ask, like, what's happening today? Is that process, the training? And I know the answer to the training piece, because actually a friend of ours is his son just recently became an agent. And so I know what's happening with the training piece, but I'll let you guys speak to it. And as far as the background process for investigations of potential applicants, is that happening the way it used to before?
And the reason why I wanted to ask the question, Rudy, was because there's a lot of speculation that the agents that have been picked up for ICE didn't go through such a thorough background check. And you may not know the answer to that, unfortunately, but I'm just curious, has that changed from the time for the things that you had to go through when you were looking to come on your agency?
Well, fortunate for me, I get to stay in the middle a little bit. There has been issues, but I don't know if it's it's a systemic issue or because of this major influx of hirees. There has been some issues. Some people have shown up and actually were in the academy and then had to excuse themselves because they had to go to court because there was a warrant issued on them. So there have been some issues, and I really believe that they kind of opened up the gates to get these numbers in and flood the recruitments, and that will occur. You're going to get people that fall through the cracks. I don't remember a time when I was coming up and went through the IOBTC. And actually enough, I think Kenny and I went to deportation officer transition training together, 2005. Yes. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, I don't remember, even when I was in IOBTC, I don't remember an incident like where, one of my classmates says, I got to go to court, or things of that nature. But yeah, there has been quite a few incidences at the academy that their attempt to streamline it is potentially will manifest itself down the road negatively 3 or 4 years from now.
No.
I couldn't agree more with Darius. You know, the problem, you know, not the problem. Because I really don't know, to answer your question, Rodney, I really don't know, you know, because I've been out of the loop for a while. But I will tell you this, you know, being in a position where I was, you know, and the same thing, you know, with Rudy, I was assigned to the U.S. Marshal Task Force, the Regional Fusion Task Force here in the city. You know, I did that for almost 13 years. And it's just the officers that passed through, you know, the older I got, the more wiser I became, the more I listened more than I spoke. And it's just, you know, this generation that's coming into law enforcement now, me personally, I don't believe they're mentally ready because they're still immature in some ways. Because, you know, they're still, you know, the college guy, but I bet you I was the same way, you know, 20 years ago when I first came on. So it's just, you know, with this day and age, you know, these young men, I don't believe they're mentally and emotionally ready because, you know, for the stories that I've heard, you know, for the past year and a half that I've been out, it's, you know, it's been tugging at guys' hearts. Right. And, you know, and we're human as well. You know, we're vilified, we're doxxed, they take pictures, they follow people home. This is, you know, it's horrible, but you know, but to answer your question, it's very difficult to answer the question because it's just if people evolve.
So I will say this. So I have a close colleague who works with Homeland Security. And so this I can speak to. I know they have changed the training. The training for agents who've been hired in the past year and a half, 2 years, do not go through the same training. Yes. And they've cut out portions of the training to get them out into the street. And what they've been told, and, you know, Kenny and Darius and I know have a person in common we're friends with, and his son went through recently. He became an agent about a year ago. And they actually told him, like, they trained him on firearms, but some of the law classes he would have taken, they said, don't worry about that. When you get to your field office, they'll teach you that stuff. So you're taking young men and women who, in many cases, have never even been in law enforcement, not like they've been policing and then decided to become a federal agent, have no law enforcement experience. You put them into a field office with a few weeks of training, and then you put them into situations where they're out in the street grabbing people for removal possibly, and then they're being surrounded, right, by protesters. And listen, some protests are just that, protests. Some people are just observing, and there's some people who are actively trying to harm agents. And now you're putting a young person in this position who isn't trained in the first place, and you ask them to navigate this complex situation and not to overreact, not to use their firearm unnecessarily. And we're seeing bad actions happening. And I think when I have two philosophies. One, when you do mass hirings, usually never works out well. And quotas. When you do quotas, especially in law enforcement, it never works out. Roddy and I lived through stop, question, and frisk, which is still the law. The law hasn't changed. Stop, question, and frisk is still legal, right? Terry stops are still legal. But in NYPD at one point in time, now I can't blame Roddy for this. I give him shit all the time because, you know, she's a chief. So I blame him for everything. But at the time, he was probably around a sergeant, I imagine, or maybe a detective. And they decided, hey, let's use this for how many stops you make. We'll use this as part of your evaluation.
Yeah.
And so instead of saying, like, stopping somebody when you have reasonable suspicion to stop them, it became, how many stops did you get? Well, now you took a young cop. Well, if the guy next to me has 10, well, I got to get at least 10 or more. And now you had cops just stopping people with no reasonable suspicion, didn't even know why they were stopping them. So the quota system never works in law enforcement, and mass hirings are a recipe for disaster. Rod, you want to ask a question?
Yeah.
Well,
And another issue too, when we discuss this, as we're discussing, we're going to have to let's get the elephant out the room. Senior leadership, you know, immigration has always been politically driven, always, and will always be. However, it's a little different now, even in comparison to Trump, the first Trump administration. When you have political appointees, and I'm going to go there, I've been doing this. When you have political appointees that are running an agency and are not engaged or not listening to the career professionals, you're also going to get the carnage that you're seeing here. And it's the rhetoric on both sides that's causing a lot of pain and misery. So it's going to have to come a time where senior leadership is going to actually have to set a tone and be honest and transparent. You can't tell a bunch of kids coming out of the academy that, there's no stopping us. We can do whatever. You can't tell a bunch of kids, oh, that training is not really necessary. You're going to learn it at your field office. No, you're not. You're going to get your firearms. You're going to get your defensive tactics. The training department is not going to sit down with you and go over elements of the INA. No, you're not. Some field offices were maybe a tad bit better. Kenny, the New York field office, I remember that training department, when I came back as to be your deputy, that training department was a little more involved than some of the others field offices. But overall, it's not going to happen. So, and another thing I hate is that when you take field office directors out of the mix, they're not sovereign anymore. They answer and they have to get direction from headquarters, and headquarters is getting direction from DHS, and ultimately the White House, Stephen Miller, is giving everyone directions. Once you take a field office director and his immediate staff, his deputies, his assistant field office directors out of the mix, you have no control. You have no control. So this is what we're seeing that's happening now. There's no reason for people fresh out of the academy to be on the streets. Not only you're having the instances that you're having, but you're also having vehicles being wrecked. The number of government vehicles are being wrecked because the officers are crashing into parked cars. So now you have to bring those vehicles back in, offline them, and get that up and going. So yes, this administration, it became about, and first and foremost, ERO is not community police. Has never been, will never be. We specialize in what we specialize into. And I like it in a time where I kind of consider ourselves the silent service. I was, once again, Buffalo, New York, as a deputy field office director, a border city, and no one in there, been living there all their lives, had no clue who ICE ever was. I remember operating in fugitive operations in New York to the Bronx. Team arrested the guy, and the guy says, "Who are you guys again?" Immigration. Immigration. Who? You see, we had that level of, but we were good at it. Kenny, in his time with the marshals, good professionals, and now it's just all over the place, and it's just disturbing, especially me for leadership, coming out of leadership, working my way up the ranks to leadership, to see this nonsense. It's heartbreaking.
Right, you want to jump in? You have something to say?
Yeah, I kind of, you touched a lot of things there, Darius, and that was really, really great. And I want to circle back regarding elected officials and the high level of immigration and ICE agents doing a lot more work. But I want to show a video of Renee Good and get both of your opinions on it, if that's okay. Amanda, can you show the video? Please?
And we begin with breaking news. ABC News obtaining new cell phone video of the moments before an ICE officer shot and killed 37-year-old Renee Good in Minneapolis. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips, and the video is believed to be taken by the ICE agent who fired the shots. We do want to warn you, the recording could make you uncomfortable.
That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you. Show your face. I'm not mad at you. That's okay. We don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
Whoa.
The tragedy unfolding Wednesday morning when the federal government says Good, behind the wheel of that maroon Honda SUV, intentionally used the car to ram the agent. City officials say that's a lie, that Good was not a threat when she was shot and killed.
So a couple things here. My first question is, during your time frame working in the different units with immigration, was this something that you saw quite often happening, where individuals were being trapped or kind of in a place where they were being surrounded, where they couldn't do their job? That's my first question. And then after that, what are your thoughts about the Renee Good incident? Like, you know, I shared my comments when I was not when I was, but working with CBS as a law enforcement contributor. I had some frustrations. I thought there was an alternative that the officers could have done regarding pulling out his firearm and shooting Miss Good. But I kind of want to get your thoughts and see have you seen a situation where ICE agents have been trapped in by citizens, and then your thoughts about the shooting incident.
You know, with my experience, you know, we were taught car stops and we were taught how to deal with vehicles. And obviously, you know, we would have never done that because I was properly trained.
Mm-hmm.
And here we go talking about these guys aren't ready for this. And I just feel for both parties. Obviously, a life was lost, but also, you know, that ICE officer now has to live with that. And it's something not easy, you know. So, but I go back to training, you know, it's a little different. We've never had, you know, in all of my years, I've never had any protesters because we weren't hated as much as they are now.
Right. No.
So that's basically the difference.
You said something very interesting. Can you say in your entire career, you've never experienced what ICE agents experiencing now, as far as people protesting and following them, which, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, like during the Obama administration, there was a significantly high number of people who were deported out of the country. Is that correct?
Well, correct. But that's because the detention standards were different back then, and you could detain everyone. And once you detain them and you get a final order of removal on them by an immigration judge, those guys have 30 days to appeal, and then they're on a flight back to their country. So they didn't have, you know, a lot of guys weren't bounded out as much as they are now, released on their own recognizance as they are now.
Okay.
It's just the detention standards were different back then.
Different.
You could detain everyone. Oh, absolutely. It made it easy. It made it much easier.
And Darius, you want to comment on that video?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I've been going back at, you know, a lot of media engagement. People called me about this incident when it occurred and so forth. So just for me, there's too many distractions. You know, you're seeing officers with their cell phones out and they're taking pictures and so forth. But from what I came to learn was that they were instructed to download these type of engagements. And it was, those images were being sent to some production section in DHS, and DHS was using it for their social media.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you're in this situation. Yeah, you're in this situation that's active and happening, and you're distracted because you're taking pictures or you're taking video. So that's one.
Right.
The body language of the officers kind of I was trouble with, and I waited. I wanted, you know, for it's still in my boss mindset. Let the investigation play out. Let's protect the officer. Let's do this the right way. But you can also tell the body language. I've never seen so many officers have these verbal engagements with protesters. The comments, you know. Well, you're a leftist and you're bringing, you know, it's because of you. I've never seen agents do that in my time. And you could potentially be in some disciplinary scenario if that was found out to be. So you have this sense of disability that's being driven by the administration and the people. You could tell by the body language that they don't think anything's wrong. You know, the lack of immediate medical support that was being provided. You know, there was an individual in there that said, "Hey, I'm a doctor. You know, they don't know how to control that situation. They don't know, oh, we got our own. Well, where is that individual? Now, maybe there was some SRT guys out there and some medic train, but that wasn't a robust, even when I was there, that wasn't a robust program. I don't know, Kenny, did New York SRT, did they have a medic?
Well, a lot of us were trained. We did do the course, and pretty much there was a medic almost on every team. So for the purpose
of treating, that's the red bag.
Yeah. Let me ask you that question.
So what is that? What does that look like? That's now, okay. Now, so well, New York is a different beast, and it has always been. But overarchingly, that's not the case.
Not normal.
In a lot of these field offices. So so you don't have, and then you don't have. You know, you have a first line supervisor that needs to be on the scene. At the very minimum, a team lead that should be on the scene, very knowledgeable to handle all. You see a lot of looking at each other, miscommunicating, and they're out there. We're just out here. Oops, what do we do?
Hey, Darius, let me cut you off. I'm asking a question. Quick question. So one of the things I haven't heard a lot of people talk about with that video in particular is that when the officers are getting into their car and Miss Good is pulling her car in front and she's like, go around. You guys, we all saw the same thing? Mm-hmm. Yes? Okay.
So we saw the same thing?
I want to make sure, because I'm a big believer, because sometimes people look at the same video and we can have 4 different opinions watching the same video.
Yeah.
So from when I watched that video, at one point she stops and she's like, go ahead, go around. Correct? Are we in agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
We're all in agreement. Yes.
So why don't the officers actually pull off and go around? It seemed like they got out of the car again to re-engage her. And I was a supervisor for a long time in NYPD and on the street with the guys. Rodney was sitting up in the Ivory Tower, having people get him coffee and stuff. Some of us was out in the street.
Here you go, Rod. Here you go, Rod. Here you go, Rod.
Some was out in the street doing the work. But I used to tell my guys, if we arrested somebody and there's a crowd yelling, why are you locking him up? Let him go. We got him. He's in the car. Let's go. You stand out there and you start arguing with people and going back and forth. And nothing good ever comes from that. So I'm always curious. I don't hear a lot of people talk about that video in particular. When the officers got in the car. Now, if they tried to pull around her and she pulls in front of them and stops them again, well, now you got to get out and engage. But they could have drove off. And this is where I think you hear like cops getting hooked, right? They got caught up in the moment. Now you're saying, which I never heard this before, about they were instructed to start recording video because they're going to create this social media feed, I'm assuming DHS is, of people antagonizing and harassing ICE agents. So they lost their training, their tactical mindset, and making sure, hey, we got who we're looking for. If we didn't get them, we're getting out of here. Let's go. As opposed to engaging. Now, you mentioned like people don't think about the officer who took that woman's life. I would imagine he is dealing with some significant mental health issues. Not say mental health issues, but there's a level of stress, post-traumatic stress that comes with taking someone's life, justified or not, in any shooting. And if there isn't, that's probably a bigger problem. If you shoot somebody, you walk away like, I'm fine, which is a bigger issue, right? Can we, I don't take one of it because of time. I just want to get your opinion on this one. Amanda, can we play the nun video from Texas?
We're learning that Sister Leticia Uboaja, a Nigerian national, was arrested and detained by immigration enforcement while walking to Mass. It happened last Sunday in McAllen, Texas. Bishop Daniel E. Flores of the Diocese of Brownsville calling her a source of goodness and hope in their community. Just a few hours after her arrest, DHS later releasing Sister Uboaja, who's been in the U.S. for at least 10 years, but her immigration status is unclear. The department has not responded to our multiple requests for comments and information about her arrest and her detention. Uboaja's detention was even condemned by a Republican lawmaker, Congresswoman Monica De La Cruz, writing, "Our immigration enforcement should target violent criminals. A Catholic nun on her way to church is not a threat to our community." The administration has repeatedly pledged to go after the worst of the worst in President Trump's immigration crackdown, but this is just the latest in a series of immigration arrests that have spurred backlash, including ICE detaining spouses of active duty service members.
That as well. And when we saw the tears when she was released, it just took your breath away, Jay. But glad that she was released. Thank you.
Thoughts?
Well, I'll go first. Once again, as Rudy, you mentioned, quotas. Quotas are not good. That was an easy collar. I'm sorry. And sorry for the jargon. An easy arrest. And it's for numbers, so they can put those numbers in front of Congress to ask for more money because we need this, we need that. That was a tough pill to swallow, and it's just hard for me. I would have fought so hard. I would have fought so hard as a senior DO. So my supervisor, I'm like, listen, I don't think this is a good idea. I don't think this is a good idea. But it's not on me, because I've not to say I've turned and looked the other way, but there's some discretionary, which we are entitled to have a bit of discretion on some of our cases.
So that's a good point. So how much discretion do you have? So Darius is my boss, and he's like, hey, you got to go pick up this person. And I'm like, really? Like, this guy's been in the country 15 years. He has shown up to court when he was supposed to. He's in limbo with his status, whatever it may be. For whatever reason, I don't think we should grab this guy. Now, ICE, you guys don't have unions, correct?
No.
There's no union for the agents, so you're almost an at-will employee.
Yep.
So how much discretion do I have? How much job security do I have? If I've got a wife and 2 kids at home and a house and a mortgage to pay, can I just be fired because I said, hey, I don't want to arrest this person? How does that work for an agent? Now, Darius, I asked that question of you.
Well, yeah, back in the day, Kenny's right. You had the discretion. It worked your way up through the up the chain. Field office director ultimately, signed off for it or delegated to the deputy or the deputies to handle it. With this administration, no, there is no discretion, and we have to close attention to what occurred during this campaign. The beginning of this campaign, what was said? We will remove or repatriate 1 million illegal aliens by the end of my first year. He ran on a campaign, and they've been going for it ever since. That's why you have the situations that you're having. That's why you're having the quotas that, unlike before. Stephen Miller's on the phone because we would have FOD calls, and all the FODs. There's 25 field offices. We go on a headquarters call with headquarters, and you get a Stephen Miller who's screaming that he wants 3,000 arrests per day per field office.
Wow,
insanity! Wow. That's never gonna happen.
Right.
We would be lucky at our nationwide. All 25 field offices are nationwide, and collectively, at the end of the week, collectively have 3,000.
Right.
This is what you're having, and when we talk about morale, people are burnt out. They've been running and gunning in the streets, and you're losing some of the other skill sets. It's ICE. ERO has never had the infrastructure in place to house and detain everybody. We've never had that infrastructure. Yeah. We don't have our, with the exception of Batavia, New York, or some of the just facilities down in Arizona and a couple of places. We don't have no field office has Rikers Island. You see what I'm getting at? We don't have where to put these people. Right. All of New York's bodies. We're going over to Jersey to be housed in Bergen County and things of that nature.
Money.
So
and
it's
money.
capacity.
Yep.
And money. Absolutely. Money. So, so what we're not hearing is you're seeing all these arrests, but what you're not hearing is on the back end. Who are removing? You're not removing the amount of people that you're trying to bring in, because once again, as Kenny eloquently socialized, people, they still have their rights. They had to go before an immigration judge. They got a period to appeal that decision, with the exception of those that already have final orders, or your 1326 illegal reentries after deportation that are caught. But yeah, so it looks great for every group that you're screaming and showing these great pictures, and it was really, really telling when they brought Border Patrol off the border and brought them into the interior of the United States. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were going to run those guys because there's no Fourth Amendment considerations on the border. So they bypassed that, or tried to flood them into these cities so they could just terrorize just walk up on any and everybody. Border Patrol's jurisdictions up to 100 miles. Beyond 100 miles, 101, 102, they have to have probable cause by which to engage with anyone.
Yep.
So they knew exactly what they were doing when they said that, because there's no seasoned field office director, ICE, would think that to let these guys run solo, and it was a good idea. That's what I'm talking about. Field office directors are either not talking because,
they're scared,
or afraid to talk.
Afraid to talk.
Yep. Afraid to talk. They're standing up, and some have been forcibly removed. Some of my colleagues were taken out because they weren't part of this or did some level of pushback. So now you have this nonsense. So this is what you're. This is actually what you're
Darius,
seeing. This is
Rodney,
a terrible name.
Hey, Darius, I almost want to comment on something, and I know Rodney, you have a question. Here's one of the tricks. You guys tell me if I'm wrong, but I know a few people, a few places. So one of the tricks is to get those numbers that Stephen Miller wanted. If the Boston field office grabs someone, right, who is illegal alien or whatever, they grab them, and now they can't hold them there, so they have to transport them to New York, and New York has to take them. So you transport them to New York. New York field office takes over this person, and then New York field office takes him to Jersey, where he's actually detained until they can remove him from the country. Boston gets credit for that apprehension. New York gets credit for apprehension, and New Jersey gets credit for that apprehension, which is total bullshit because Boston's the one that actually apprehended them. But the other field officers, so much pressure now that we have to meet this quota. Everybody's getting numbers, right? Now, it's not much unlike it's a whole other conversation what happened in NYPD in law enforcement. But when you hear these numbers of people being apprehended, and again, I say this over and over again, quotas do not work, right? It sound good, but over time, people feel the pressure to meet that quota, and that's when they start skirting the law and start skirting policy. Rod, please ask your question.
Yeah, I have another video I have to share. And by the way, Darius and Ken, really good insight to what's going on in the ICE world, of the ICE universe. But I have another video, Alex Preddy, another horrible and horrific incident. But I do have some concerns regarding the protesters and people using that First Amendment, and also maybe even putting the agents in a very, very difficult situation. So Amanda, please, can you show the Alex Preddy video, please?
We want to give you a closer look at what the videos show, slowing some of it and pushing in to get a better view. We want to warn you that some of the video is hard to watch. This video shows Alex Preddy face to face with a federal agent on Nicollet Avenue. He's holding a phone as the agent pushes him toward the sidewalk. Another angle shows Preddy walking into the street, helping to direct traffic. When an agent pushes a woman into a snowbank, he goes to help. That's when the agent begins spraying Preddy in the face. It's when Preddy goes to help the woman again, several agents grab him and throw him down. From this angle, you can see Preddy being held down. You can see an agent in a gray jacket approach with empty hands, while other agents appear to be hitting Preddy. The man in gray appears to pull something from Preddy's waist. Then, the first shot. You can hear at least 10 shots after that. What did you just do? The agents back away, but return. Come on. In this video, you can hear what they are saying.
Ken, you mind if we start with you and kind of give you...
Listen, that's another tough video to watch. And of course, that's Minnesota. And I can't confirm this, but some of those were Border Patrol officers. When you're assigned to protect the border, it's a lot different than protecting a neighborhood or enforcing the law in the neighborhood. But which I meant to say, enforcing the law on the border, and enforcing a interior law. wrong place, wrong time. And where are the senior officers there to take control of that situation? You don't need 6 guys to handcuff one guy, 2 guys, everybody else turn around, protect those officers. Where is the senior officers there? Where? And I take offense to that, and Darius could attest to this well. Every single officer that came into our unit, when I trained them within the criminal law and the immigration law aspects, I also told them, I said, listen, body cams are coming, because the NYPD started rolling them out in the early 2000s. I'm like, they're coming, and you should act as if you're being recorded. And people act totally different as if they're being recorded.
Yeah.
So it's just where's the senior officers there? It's a tough video to watch.
Yeah. Darius, your thoughts?
Yeah, it was, and I can confirm that was Border Patrol, and it was intentional. Not to be disparaging to Border Patrol. Let's be absolutely clear. Their job and their mission is totally different on the border. These guys, they have some arduous terrain and circumstances that they have to engage with. That is what you saw is Border Patrol tactics. And it was intentional. So
when you say intentional, what do you mean?
Yeah, for them, they're not going to, on the border, they're not going to de-escalate.
Okay.
They're not going to de-escalate. These guys
nobody around.
get in shootouts with cartels.
Yeah, there's nobody around.
These guys get in shootouts with cartels. These guys get into situations where one patrol agent may happen upon a group of 5, 10, 15 people, and his backup, it could be 20, 30 minutes away. And he has to get assistance from the air. And he has to contain these people by himself. So he doesn't have room to, hey, please stop. The first person that, spouts off or whatever, he's got to put that person down quickly. So others, they'll get hype and they bum rush the guy until, backup comes. So but they knew exactly what they were doing when they put Border Patrol in there. Now, LA, I can give them some leeway because from the border, it's 100 miles from Sandy, from the southern border, California, up to LA. So they kind of, all right, LA, you're gonna catch it. But Minnesota, Chicago, unless they did a creative, said, hey, O'Hare Airport or the international airport in Minnesota, we now deem that as a border. So therefore, this is how we creatively sign off on this nonsense. Right. But those tactics were specific, they were politically driven, and they were designed especially for a specific group. So yes, I don't like these protesters running up on these officers. It's a terrible situation. The officers have to do what they have to do, but ICE isn't trained in that.
Right.
So you put us in this situation because of the rhetoric. Like, why can't we just go back to being the silent service, concentrating on the most egregious of criminals,
which there are plenty.
People can get behind. People get behind we arrested the kitty touchers. People get behind. We're arresting the hardcore gang members. People can get behind. We're the rapists. People can understand that, but it's hard to get people to understand that we're running up on Esmeralda, whose only possible criminal activity was she stole diapers out of the local bodega. Right. No one is going to go for that.
Right.
No one's going to fall for that. And we're going to get everybody going. No, we're not. We never have. We never will. And I understand the Biden administration didn't do us any favors either. They didn't do us. So let's be very clear about that. But Border Patrol, I've said it while this was going on, Border Patrol at the very minimum stopped processing fingerprints, photograph everybody that you encounter, get them into the system. So that way, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, when they're encountered, we know where they originated. They couldn't even do that.
Right. And that's so. Let me ask you 2 questions. Do you still have to jump off in a couple minutes, Darius?
Lucky for you guys, they just texted me. They're running 10 minutes late. So
all right, because this is a great conversation. We're going to hold you as long as we possibly can. We're going to kidnap you to the last minute. So two questions. One, well, to your point, I have said this personally, professionally. Under the Biden administration, when there was just you saw a mass movement of people across the border into the country. That's not good. That's not good for so many different reasons. And you just outlined it like we have no idea who these people are. And listen, I'm going to believe a large percentage of those folks are just folks looking for a better life, right? They're coming from terrible situations. They're looking for a better life in America, what America's always stood for, right? But there within that group, there's some bad people, right? Those are people with this malicious intent. When I was in JTTF, I remember we had a guy who came from Pakistan. He got to South America, made his way up through Central America, and he got stopped at the border. And he said he was a Shia Muslim, and he was seeking religious asylum because he was being persecuted by Sunni Muslims. It turned out his story was all bullshit, and he was actually part of a terrorist group, right? So people got into this country who have some bad intentions. I believe the focus isn't on the worst of the worst as it's supposed to be, because it takes more investigation steps, right? They're not out necessarily hanging on the corner delivering, Chinese food. Those folks are committing crimes. It takes more investigative work to find them. So again, when you start these quota systems, well, now I might take me 2 weeks to find this guy and apprehend him, as opposed to the person walking down the street. So after saying all that, my question for you, and I guess this is more to you, Darius, as a director, mask. What's your feeling about agents wearing masks? Are you in favor of it, or are you against it? And does the field office director have the ability to tell his or her agents they cannot wear masks if they want to?
Yeah, I don't know. That nonsense started as I was walking out the door, and I still haven't gotten an answer on it. This is what I believe actually occurred. Remember when they opened up where they flooded the streets with officers? Mm-hmm. They flooded the streets to augment ICE. You had FBI out there. You had DEA out there. You had the U.S. Marshals out there. You had all these federal agencies. Most of those federal agencies have undercover enterprises within them. Mm-hmm. That's where those masking came from. So we want to augment ICE because numbers, we're going to just flood the street. You got a DA and an FBI guy. I noticed I said, hey, they were being pulled off of their investigations. People were like, whoa. I'm working a case. Now I'm going to be, these people are taking photos, ICE is in the news and somebody's going to recognize me. How do we make this happen? Kenny, we never wore masks. I mean, maybe during the COVID, when you guys were running around out in the streets, you put the mask on, whatever.
With the baklava's, which did nothing.
Right.
And not only, and with the actions, you confuse people, and you make it hard for our brother and sister law enforcement officers, NYPD, Chicago PD, the local sheriff's department, when we're running around like that. It's intimidation. I think that's how it started, that you had the other federal agencies that got pulled into this. They didn't want to be associated with whether it be ICE or law enforcement as a whole, because when this is over, they got to go back to their day jobs. And they may be working a case. They may be working an undercover case that they got pulled out of or whatever scenarios. They may be working, but now they're already identified. Not necessarily their agency, because you notice there are a lot of those agencies that it just said, police. There was no, are you DA? You don't know. All that was by design to, for protection purposes. Right. So that's what happened. Is kind of, it caught fire and it stayed. In my opinion, to get the cooperation from the other federal agencies that came into play. Now you're seeing it a little bit better now, especially here in DC. You're starting to see, DEA, U.S. Marshals on these little joint things that they're doing in the streets. So you're starting to see it. But when it started, you didn't know who's who at all.
There was a case, Rodney, I think you might have spoke about this on CBS up in near Columbia University, when ICE agents went to a building and identified themselves as NYPD detectives or police. And I think the super let them in the building. They said they were looking for a missing kid. And they apprehended a young lady who was, I think she was a student at Columbia, I believe. You remember the story a few months ago? Remember the story? Yeah. So, and I mean, and that makes, listen, policing is a hard enough job. Now when people like, well, are you really police or are you an agent? Or, you know, that makes it twice as hard. And you're doing a disservice to your fellow law enforcement officers when you start making up stories like that.
Well, Rudy, also criminals are now wearing these masks and saying that they're law enforcement. So the impersonation concern has probably grown as well. So, you know, these masks have so many negative components to it. And, you know, it's funny. I think there's a police department where the elected officials said, well, listen, my cops are allowed to wear masks if they want to. And I said to myself, you know, that's just a way to ruin relationships by, you know, making sure that everybody has their face covered up. Listen, if we can't wear a mask in New York City and we have to be able to wear nameplates and drive around in vehicles that have numbers on it, and there's ways to be identified, especially through a lot of different platforms, the world we live in and social media, then I think every single department needs to do it as well.
I mean, listen, as far as the doxing thing and people being identified, if you work for the public, right? If you're working on behalf of the public and you're being paid via tax dollars, people are going to find out who you are. I can find out your salary, and unless you have totally blacked out your digital footprint, someone's going to find out who you are. Cops have been doing the job for over 200 years?
180.
180, almost. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Technical. For 180 years, we've been doing this job, and people know who you are. They're going to find you. I just think listen, it hasn't happened to me personally, but I can only imagine, you know, you got a family, a home, and now people are coming to your house. But I don't know how, we hear the stories. I don't know how much that's actually happening, but the harm you're doing when you're putting a mask on, you're doing a car stop. It's like, I mean, I'll speak for me personally. I used to work for the AG's office. I used to travel all over the state of New York and be in some rural parts of the state. I can't imagine somebody pulling me over and walking up to a car with a mask on, how I'm going to handle that situation. Yeah. My first thought is, and this isn't a cop with good intentions, right? This may not even be a cop. I'm not sure who this is. And you can buy a vest that says police from anywhere, right? So it is. I think it is a fraught policy and strategy to have these agents doing enforcement masked up and engaging with the public, right? I think, unfortunately, we're probably going to see more Alex Preddy's and Renee Good situations that are going to happen if this policy continues over the next couple of years. Question for you guys. I know we're running out of time, so I'll ask it real quick because we should have asked this in the beginning. And I think a lot of folks don't know. I have some understanding, but nowhere near what you two have, Darius and Ken. Status. First off, if you come into the country illegally, is it a crime or is it just a violation of federal law?
Go ahead, Ken. I'm gonna let you answer that.
You know what, Darius? You only have a couple of minutes, so I wanted to give you the floor.
No, go ahead. I talk too much as is.
You know what? It's a violation of federal law, but it's it's an administrative law.
Administrative law,
it's not a criminal law. It's a fine or a violation.
Right. So now, because it's an administrative law violation, that allows you guys to actually, without going to a judge to get an arrest warrant.
Correct.
Right. So just explain that part for the listeners, because not everyone understands that.
Correct. Yes. So basically, being that it's just an administrative law, all it needs is a signature from the field office director on down, from the deputies, from the FOD, the field office director, to the deputy field office director, to the AFODs, which is the assistant field office directors on the way down. All you need is a signature for an I-200, which is called, the warrant of arrest or deportation.
Okay. And then that allows you to go out and apprehend that person and then bring them to a detention facility. And then eventually they'll go before a judge, correct?
Correct. After being processed and served with the documentation. because obviously that's the most important thing. Once, that's the most important thing. Once he served all the documentations, then the next step is to determine whether he's eligible to be released or not. And once the supervisor makes a determination, or the A5, then we'll get bed space approved to whatever bed, and either the officers or a contracted services will transport those individuals to a detention facility.
Okay. And then from the detention facility, from that point, they'll be sent back to the country they came from.
Correct. Well, obviously, if they have court here in New York,
right.
you want to keep them up here in New York, but we could send them everywhere in the United States. The thing is, the bed space is cheaper down south, so they'll transfer a lot of cases down to Texas, where there's an influx of bed space.
And they'll keep them in Texas until their court date, and they'll bring them back to New York.
And then because a lot of these courts are within these facilities or near the facilities that they're at.
Okay.
Or they'll do a change of venue on the court.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So just move his case to Texas. Okay. And
Yeah.
how long does the process normally take? Historically, I know now it may be different.
Listen, they have it's almost identical to the criminal aspect of it. They have like 90 days to bring due cause. And, obviously they'll always file for extensions. And what these attorneys do, they file for these extensions because the longer they're in bed space, that's a dollar amount that's attached to them. So then, they'll either release them out on bond or release them on their own recognizance. But it could take, it could take up to 90 days for you to see the judge and for the judge to make a decision. And then you have 30 days after that decision to appeal. Even if the alien doesn't say a word at court that he wishes to file an appeal, by law, we have to wait 30 days to actually remove him in the event that he files an appeal.
Okay. It is a complicated process. And I think we don't, unfortunately, there's so much attention on these interactions in the street. People don't take into account the ICE professionals who've been doing this for so long, right? Before, the current strategy and policy, who've been doing this work for so long and doing it effectively. And I mentioned to someone recently, you never even thought about ICE or even heard about them up until recently. More the average person, like Rodney has dealt with them, and I've dealt with them in my law enforcement career. But for the average person, never even thought about ICE. May have heard on the news or ICE agents apprehended someone, but that was it, because you have professionals doing the work and doing it properly. So as we get ready to close out, I'm going to propose this question to you both, and I'll start with you, Darius, first. In a perfect world, if you came back as director of ICE or Homeland Security, Secretary of Homeland Security, what would be the path forward that would make the agency still effective in their mission, but also keeping those officers safe?
Yeah, we're gonna go back to old school. We're gonna go back to the stuff that Kenny and I were doing, and we learned to do coming up the ranks. We're gonna target enforcement, and I would try to get some better cooperation with the so-called sanctuary jurisdictions in regards to their criminal entities, within their jails and so forth and so on. To really try to push that. It's a lot safer for the community. It's a lot safer for the officers. If case in point, Rikers Island, ICE had trailers out there. Hey, when you guys are done with them or her, give us to us so we can move them through their immigration process. So I would really push
criminals
to get back to
convicted criminals, right, Darius? Convicted criminals, not
keyword.
Convicted criminals. Yeah, and that's we're going to get back to doing that. We're going to have to also understand, and also this would be some legislative piece. Listen, neither the Democrats or the Republicans, neither groups really want to get a handle on this. Because I keep saying this, we are the executive branch of the government. We just execute the laws that are on the books. If either you guys have issues, legislate accordingly. And then we will execute accordingly. We can't be doing this, operating in the blind. Everybody. No, not, for lack of words. They have to get a handle on immigration. Also, another piece, Why is it taking so long for these people's applications, benefits to come through? Why do these people are constantly out of status or their status is in limbo? So what's happening with United States Citizenship and Immigration Services? They're the ones that give out benefits. It isn't ICE. So I think it's a comprehensive question and answering session that needs to be had. And you have to look at it in a comprehensive manner. How do we fix immigration that is humane? We still have the enforcement, but nevertheless, we can move people through, or if they're not, then they have to be repatriated. And that's it's just, yeah, you're coming at the ICE guys who are just enforcing, but you're not legislating appropriately.
But it starts
and
the folks who are supposed to be doing their job aren't doing their job. And we put the ones that on the front lines, put them in the most harm and jeopardy. So I'm sorry, Kenny, before you answer that question, you said something, Darius, and I don't know, maybe Rodney would be a good person to answer this question. You mentioned sanctuary cities. So from where I sit removed, I always suspect even these like mayors and politicians like, oh, we're a sanctuary city. They were still willing to work with ICE when it came to like the targeted enforcement. Hey, we got a bad guy who's committed, who's part of MS-13. Yeah, we're a sanctuary city, but you can still go grab him and get him out of here. Did you find that, and Rodney, you can speak to this too, did you find that even though these cities were sanctuary cities, quote unquote, they were still willing to work with ICE when it came to targeted enforcement with criminals, or they were just not willing to work at all?
Well, from personally speaking, being assigned to the task force, we had detectives assigned to our squad, and basically we were just dealing with the influxes of warrants in the cities, and basically our unit handled all those individuals that were foreign born, and it was up to us to determine, okay, this guy either naturalized to a U.S. citizen or is a green card holder, but now he's amenable to proceeding. So that was kind of what we did, but. I was in there, during the de Blasio administration, and it was basically hands off. It's like, Ken, I know this guy's a bad of the bad, but you know what? We can't help you out with this. And you know what? That wasn't a problem, because we had numbers, but it's all, it's even if it was, I'll bring up a perfect example, the sex offender registry, right? A lot of those cases, we had a lot of help from outside agencies because the NYPD were basically, and not because of the PD, it's because of the mayor's office putting pressure on the police commissioner not to help out ICE, even to go after registered sex offenders.
Wow.
And it was tough. Listen, but we did good. We did great. And the numbers and the statistics were amazing. It's just, but it takes work. These individuals are hiding. So, and they're hiding well. They're not working. They don't have an employment authorization where you get a social security number. They're working with those guys. Boop, he's working at, McDonald's. We know where he is. No, these guys are hiding well, and they know we're looking for them.
Right.
Yeah, Rudy, just last thing. The prior administration before Adams, there was absolutely no way possible we were working with ICE. I mean, the pushback that the mayor's office would have gotten would have been just totally over the top. So one thing I could guarantee you is during that administration, during the de Blasio administration, there was no working with ICE. Things changed when Adams came in, and then he started kind of working with the Trump administration regarding, hey, we need to work with this agency in order for us to make things safer and identify individuals that are here illegally and get them out. To kind of the play there was to make New York City safe. We have to work with our law enforcement agencies. So we had one mayor that was absolutely not. We had another one that I don't want to say was in bed with the Trump administration, but had to kind of play nice with the administration that's currently in office. And there was a little bit more of a stronger partnership, be it right, wrong, or indifferent. That was the dynamic. And right now it's kind of going back to, no, we're not working with the agency, with the ICE agents.
Sorry, I'm going to cut you off, Rob. I got to ask you this question. Was there any conversation? How did de Blasio's administration, how did the people in that office justify? Now, you tell me, listen, New York City, Rodney and I both grew up in the city, both grew up in Queens. So we know it's a diverse place, right? So there's cops in NYPD who have family members who don't have citizenship status, right? We have, it is a place where we have a melting pot of folks from around the world who are in New York City. And if you're telling me the guy who's making deliveries, who's, doing construction, cutting grass, that's not a priority. We don't want that person being hunted down by ICE. Okay, I'll give you that. But how do you justify someone who's convicted sex offender? And the policy of the administration is, well, yeah, we don't want ICE removing that person from our city.
Listen, it's a simple response. New York City is a progressive city. It's a city that does not want to work with certain units or agencies that may hinder certain communities. And, the de Blasio administration made sure that they catered to those communities that had the frustration.
I'm yelling at you, but I know it's not your fault. I'm sorry. I'm just passionate about this. Go ahead, Ken, please.
Listen, I will tell you this, the previous administration, I'm talking about the presidency, by opening those borders, they allowed a criminal element into the city that actually took over MS-13, La Mara Salvatrucha, also the Mexican gangs that were all, you guys are familiar, Roosevelt Boulevard, during that whole Biden administration, there were guys shooting stabbings almost every day on route, because it's just, that is like the melting pot right there, that part of Queens. Mm-hmm. And the Venezuelans, Tren de Aragua, I know you hear all about this. I've seen the statistics. Those guys, you want to talk about, it basically went back to when the Mariel boat lift where Cuba, where Fidel, emptied out his asylums and his jails on the condition that they go to the Mariel Bay, get on a boat, and go to Florida because America is, welcome, come. Mm-hmm. And even though Tony Montana was a fictional character, it was actually based on a real life from Mariel Cubans coming in, getting out of jail in Cuba, and coming to the U.S.
Right.
And the same thing happened with the Tren de Araguas. It is, and then now, more than likely, Trump is probably going to offer some type of, obviously, assistance to them, but you can't start sending people back to ruin. So there's going to be some type of temporary TPS, temporary protective status. So, we're just going to have to arrest these guys. Same thing. And we're still doing this with Cubans. Luckily, now they're all dying off one by one. But now this puts a strain on, and I'm only mentioning New York because I don't know about the other states, but it puts a strain on the public services system. It puts a strain on the PD, social services. It is just so bad here in New York, and they just don't want to see it.
Hey, so part of this, typically, tell me if I'm wrong for this, both of you guys. In my experience, those gangs, MS-13, Tren de Agua, the cartels, they tend to prey on their own communities.
Yes. 100%.
So if we're worried about protecting our vulnerable population in a community, in the city, right? So we're seeing those folks who are doing the laborious jobs that we appreciate, that benefit us who aren't doing them. We're allowing people to come in and prey on those people. So how is this public safety when you let these folks stay here when there's cause to remove them? Right.
Rudy, this is all a public eye concern, and you're 1,000% correct. If you take a look at making a municipality safer going into the future, this is a great way, working with all of your law enforcement agencies to identify individuals, be it that are citizens or illegal immigrants. When you're working with all law enforcement agencies, you're going to do things to make communities and neighborhoods safer, no doubt about it. But if you have communities and people who are very, very vocal that do not want to work with federal policies and strategies, their voices are very, very loud, and they will make sure they put elected officials in their place to make sure that, you're going to have to figure out a different way to make our neighborhood safe. And that's where the concern may be.
Yeah. I just listen, as we close out, I just want to say to those who are listening, who I got to agree, the overwhelming majority of people, no matter if you're Democratic, Republican, in the middle, or wherever you fall to the extreme left and right, you have to, I got to believe the majority of people want violent criminals out of their communities.
That's what we want as officers. That's what we want.
Right. Now, there's some people at the extremes who say, oh, anybody comes in illegally, they got to go. We want them out of here. No due process. Get them out. Those are extremes, I believe. I think most people say, listen, the person's coming here, they haven't committed a crime. Let's find a way to get them some type of status and work towards citizenship if that's what they want. If they don't, then they can leave. That's fine. But the worst of the worst, these people who commit these violent crimes, we're not helping our communities by keeping them here. And so I totally get what you're saying with the politics and politicians. But again, I think the average person on the street, if you go to the average person in the Bronx and you said, hey, listen, there's a guy who raped a 13-year-old girl who came to the country illegally, and ICE is looking to remove him after he serves his time. So they're going to say, no, let's keep him here. Let him stay. I don't think the average person in the Bronx or South Jamaica, Queens, or Brownsville, Brooklyn is saying that. So with that being said, the people, right? And as I just listened to a podcast yesterday with Raphael Warnock, and one of the things he said in his new book, he says, the people are the power. The power is in the people, not the people. I'm sorry, I'm messing up. The power is in the people, right? The power is in the people. The people have the opportunity to make a difference. And so people in your communities, we have to start speaking up, because this is insanity that we are putting policies in place that are not keeping us any safer.
Yeah, but Rudy, I'm sorry, I know we got to go, but and you made a very, very good point. But there's also people who have migrated to this country that are illegal, but are in the process of trying to get their citizenship or whatever it may be. And they're working hard and they're doing the right things. But now there's a risk. And you saw things what happened in Minneapolis, where, they're just start grabbing people. And that's where you see the thin line of, hey, public safety versus a situation where the public doesn't want federal agents in their neighborhood. And we just want to make sure our family members are not necessarily being grabbed by these law enforcement agencies. And that's where the concern may be, where they'll sit here and say, well, listen, I know you got to get that criminal, but yeah, at the same time, I don't want you grabbing my sister or my mother or my cousin off the street, getting coupled in with the wrong people.
That's what they're supposed to be doing. That's what with the current administration, when they came and said, we're going after the worst of the worst. That he campaigned on it, and he said it over and over again.
Why does it sound like you're getting mad at me, bro? I'm just telling you the facts.
Because you're here. And by the way, it's the power is in the people, not the people in power. That's the proper quote. I screwed it up, but I made sure I got it right before we finish.
Remember, it's quantity over quality now.
Right. Yes. And there lies the problem. We're back to where we started from. Those goddamn.
Rudy, that was one of, obviously I saw the writing on the wall, because once he got reelected in November, you started hearing, okay, this is going to be happening. This is going to be happening. I'm like, you know what? Now it's a good time for me to go. It should be a good time for me to go. And I think I made the best decision.
Yeah. Yes, you did. Because it is. Listen, bottom line, you have men and women out there. I'm sure there's some folks who
good men and women, Rudy. There are those officers that I work with. They were put in a bad situation, and they're good people and they're good officers, and they think along the same way I do. Let's do targeted enforcement of criminals, not Jose the dishwasher or along those lines. Guys that are working constructions, they're doing a job that that's a skilled job.
Listen, I live down in Florida now, and somebody working on the roof at 100 degrees. Right? I'm not doing it right there.
Good for you, yeah. All for you, bro. You want something to drink?
Yeah, but Rudy, there's a lot of American people out there that don't want any illegal immigrants here. I don't care if you're working on a roof or doing dishwasher. And that's where there's such a division in this country regarding, do we go after the worst of the worst, or do we just want nobody that's a citizen here in a country? And there's part of this country, I apologize, I may offend some people, who don't want any immigrants here. whatsoever. And that's the frustration with this whole policy.
Yeah, listen, they don't want them here until they want them here. Because if you study history, go back to the 80s, we said, don't worry about the law. We invited folks to come in from Central and South America and Mexico to come work in agriculture. And we had a process in place where they could go back and forth. They could work here for a few months in the States, work on the farms, and then go back to their country, take the money back. And then when people started staying, and all of a sudden became a problem. But it wasn't a problem a few years ago. We just pushed the law that was in place and pushed the law to the side. Don't worry about it. So it's a problem until it's not a problem. We want them here when it's convenient, and then we don't want them here. This is the sentiment now. I'll get them out until they're gone. And then, well, who's doing this job? And now we're going to, and you'll see another 15, 20 years, like, oh, it'll be an influx of immigration again. But it's all cyclical, and I need a drink now after this conversation. It is an absolute pleasure. We could probably talk another 2 hours about this. I will tell you, so sorry, Darius had to jump off, but you and Darius have been part of the longest show we've had so far. So congratulations, episode number 10.
I appreciate it.
You guys have given us a fantastic conversation, a lot to talk about, and I think we can probably do a part 2 at some point, because I'm sure there'll be something that's going to happen.
Hey, let me know. I have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge and a lot of good things. Good things that I love to discuss. Obviously, nobody want to talk about the bad things, because we learn from our mistakes. That's why we make them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Learning from the mistakes. And that's a perfect way to end. So for all those who are watching and listening, we ask that you subscribe on YouTube, hit that notification button, and follow us every Tuesday evening. New episode drops of The Risk Room. Folks, thank you so much. Kenny, thank you.
Thank you.
Be blessed.
Thank you.
And be well. Take care.
Be well. Take care.
Law enforcement is one of the most dangerous and demanding jobs in the world. Every shift, every call for service, and every encounter carries real risk. Stay vigilant, manage that risk wisely, and above all, make sure you go home to your family. Stay safe out there.